So our first guest is an illustrator, and he does some beautiful work. I've seen his work. Welcome, Rhonda. I'm glad you're here. Glad to see you. And our first guest name is Don Tate, and he is an illustrator of children's books, and he has a lot of uh, books that have been published with his illustrations. I'm hoping he's able to share a little bit of his illustrations with us tonight. Maybe he will. But in any event, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. Don Tate. Okay, okay.
Thank you for much inviting me to be here. Honored to be here.
Okay, great.
Thanks so much.
And were you going to be sharing some of your illustrations with us? I sent you an email about that.
See.
Did you get that email that I sent you?
I got the email. We'll have to see how well it works. I have illustrations from one of my current books, and I set it up as a keynote, and we'll have to share a screen and then test it out and see if it works.
Okay, well, we're going to do that after we talk. So normally when we do the share screen or illustrations or examples, we do that toward the last third or so of the interview. So you have a new book coming out. Wade Hudson is the author.
Yes.
You're the illustrator, and it's called The Day Madear Voted.
The Day Madear Voted. Yes. Here's the cover.
Okay, you have, because so you already have the book, because it doesn't come out when July 16th is the release.
July 16th. I think this is actually one of only 2 of the printed books that exist right now. So yes.
Okay, and that's beautiful. Now this is not Tyler Perry's Madear, so we don't want people to get confused about that.
We don't want to get that confused, and that is something that I thought about when I created the illustrations. I wanted to be sure to create an image of an African American woman that was not Madear.
That was not Madear. Yeah. And the Madear in the movies doesn't have an R on the end of the name. So that's one distinction. A lot of people who were called Madear, I know my husband's mother, they called her Madear, and it was with the R. So
and I think that's probably where that came from, but I know that a lot of people have feelings about Madear, and so I really wanted to avoid that. Yeah.
Well, strong one way or the other.
Madear.
Yeah.
And I really want.
So, Don, tell us how you got into. Were you drawing as a child? Was art always your gift, your talent?
Art was always my gift. I was always drawing pictures. I was always making art. I was the kind of kid who would find junk from around the house and turn it into a toy. So an old sock might turn into a puppet. If I found some old yarn, I might make a wall hanging, either through braiding it or, weaving it or whatever. I just kept my fingers busy creating and making things. Yes, I was always the art kid.
Yeah, I found that people who have the art talent, it manifests itself very young. My stepson is an artist, and he was 10 when my husband and I got married, and he lived with us. It had already manifested at that point. So, and then his daughter also has the art bug, and she was drawing. You can tell the difference. People who have a talent for drawing, when they're 4 and 5, their drawings actually look like something, like not just scribble scratch.
I think that can be said of just about any talent. When I look back, I'm the oldest of 4 boys, and I had a brother who was a singer. He sang in local choirs. Had another brother who was really good with athletics, and another brother who was just an all-around good at everything. Well, my brother who was a singer is an elementary school music teacher today, very popular back home in Des Moines, Iowa. My other brother who was good at sports grew up and became a high school football coach. And my baby brother, who was good at everything, he's to this day, he's good at everything. So we get our talents. I often tell kids, that I often, when I visit elementary schools, to look for your talents what are you good at today? Because that can be the thing that will carry you through. That's your purpose in life that can carry you through, your life.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think often our kids have great talents, but they may not be the talent that we envision for them. And then we don't always encourage it. But when we encourage a young person's talent, no matter what it is, it could be drawing, it could be writing, it could even be video games. But when we encourage that talent and help them to channel it, they can make it into something wonderful. But it's often up to us adults to recognize that this is their interest and to cultivate it.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of times parents want their children to pursue things where they can make a good living. And sometimes the things that where we have talent may or may not be that in the parents' eyes. They may not be able to see how this can translate into a long-term income. So, but you can still pursue something that may be a very good profession and still cultivate your talent.
Most definitely. Sometimes I regret because my when my daughter was young, she was good with hair. She loved to braid hair and come up with all kinds of wild hairstyles. And she said, "I want to grow up and I want to become a hairstylist." And I was like, "No, you want to go to school and get a 4-year degree and go get your hair done." And I didn't encourage her there. Now my daughter is successful in her career, but I sometimes wonder, where that, I just kind of wish that I wouldn't have cut her dreams off like that.
Mm.
You never know where they would have taken her.
Well, she may still pick it up, you never know, or do
Yeah.
it on the side. And now people doing hair, a lot of them are making bank depending
Yes.
on what, they don't even wash hair anymore. Who told me? Did you tell me that, Rhonda, or some other people?
But
When you go get your hair done, they don't shampoo it anymore automatically. They expect you to
a
show
lot of
up
people don't
with your
shampoo in
hair.
hair anymore. They charge extra
Yeah,
for
yeah, that's not included. So you never know. A lot of it sounds like yours. You translate it into. So do you do the art full time? Do you do the illustrations full time?
I am a full-time author and illustrator and speaker. So yeah, I write for I write for stories myself that others illustrate. I illustrate other people's stories, and I also write and illustrate my own stories.
cool.
I've been illustrating since '93, so I've been doing this, almost 40 years, but I didn't become a writer until around 2009. I just didn't have the confidence in my ability to put words together. I thought that writers were for people who had doctoral degrees or who had studied like ancient medieval poetry in college or something like that. But I'm just supposed to make pretty pictures, and it wasn't until I learned to respect my voice and my imperfect way of speaking and put my words out into the world the way that I speak, and I finally became a writer. And I love writing just as much as I love illustrating. When you're writing, you're telling a story. When you're illustrating, you're telling a story. In both cases, you're creating an image in your reader's mind.
Absolutely. Well, now, what was it that gave you that courage? I know you said you learned to accept the way you speak and have courage to present your thoughts in the way that you speak. But was there an actual moment or was there a person that gave you that courage to move forward that way?
Yeah, so when I moved to Austin, I joined the local SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And I went to the monthly meetings, and the writers would encourage me. They would, Don, you know how to tell a story. You just need to put some words together and try your hand at writing. So if you remember back in 2008, somewhere around then, everyone was blogging. So I
Mhm.
started a blog and I started just getting used to putting my words out into the world through the blog. And I got a large following. And I had friends who said, Don, you know what? You can really write. You have a great ability to express yourself. You need to stop writing in this blog and put it together and put a story together in a manuscript. And I remember the person who that was. Her name is Cynthia Lydic Smith, who is a local author here in Austin, who said, Don, you can write. And when Cynthia said that, I believed her, and I've been writing ever since.
That's awesome.
Well, that is great.
Yeah. Because it takes courage to not only do it, but to listen to people who are encouraging you. Because there are some people who get years of encouragement and they never move forward because they still doubt themselves. So the fact that you were listening to people who encouraged you and then you move forward, that takes a certain amount of bravery, and it worked out. Your books are beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is a brave thing as an artist to create something and put it out into the world, because everyone's not going to like your art. Everyone's not going to like your painting. Everyone is not going to like your words. And so over the years, you have to develop a thick skin and just understand that art is subjective, and that's okay, but still make your art and still put it out into the world.
Absolutely.
And that's true when you write books as well. It's subjective. There's some objectivity to it in terms of maybe grammar, but one person can think a story
And see,
is
and that is one of the things too that I was afraid that people were going to make fun of my grammar. And I was
well, that's what
afraid
editors are for.
that that's what
I was
editors are for. But also, my imperfect way of speaking, my bad grammar, that's the way my grandmother spoke. That speaks to my family history. That speaks to my heritage. And there's nothing wrong with not speaking perfect Queen's English. We need to simply embrace our language the way that we speak it and tell a story in our words. And between the creator and the editor, we'll put a story out there that is authentic.
Well, authenticity is important because that makes it unique. Because anybody can be a cookie cutter or copy other people's work. So now, do you know the number? How many books have you illustrated, and how many books have you written? And if there's an overlap, you can say that there's overlap. So,
I don't know the exact number, and that's because I started off um, as an illustrator in educational publishing. So I illustrated many 8-page, 16-page basal readers, which are basically books that are used in the classroom as part of a larger reading program, but they're still books. Books for the trade, I would say that I have written and/or illustrated. So I say I've written and/or illustrated more than 90 books altogether. For the trade publishing, it's around 20, 25, something like that.
oh, okay.
Wonderful.
So, are these a wide variety of authors, or do you have authors you illustrated for more than once?
So
Do you have
it's a
some
wide
that ask for you when they're doing a book, when they get a book signed?
Yeah, so it's been a wide variety of authors. The way it typically works is an author sells a manuscript to a publisher, and that publisher works with a pool of illustrators, and the art department will and the editor will get together and say, "Hey, this illustrator is a perfect match for these words," and they will reach out. My buddy Chris Barton, who lives here in Austin, we started off as writing critique buddies, but then we've gone on to create 2 books together. One of them is called Whoosh, Lonnie Johnson's Stream of Inventions, and it's the story of the inventor of the Super Soaker Squirt gun. You remember
Okay,
Yes.
and that was
back in the day, everybody would use that Super Soaker.
an
Okay,
African
and
American man invented that, I
it was an
believe.
African American inventor who,
Okay.
yeah, to this day is collecting royalties on the Super Soaker. So yeah. And then the other one is called The Amazing Age of John Roy Lynch. And it is the story of a man who was once enslaved and became one of our country's first um, African American speakers of the House.
Oh,
And
okay.
this was all in the
But so it
backdrop
was
of
right after
Reconstruction.
Reconstruction. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, a lot happened right after Reconstruction, and then it got shut down, and then it had to resurface again 100 years later. Um,
Yes, history
so
repeats itself. They say we're going through a third reconstruction today.
yeah, I don't see that, but anyway, I don't want to go there. So anyway, I um now when you um illustrate something,
Mhm.
do you have a signature look to yours, or do you have a variation? Like some people's work, you can see it. If you pick up, there's one particular illustrator that I know. If I see a book, I know that it's him. It
You know,
doesn't matter which author it is, multiple authors.
yeah,
Um, a lot of artists, they have a signature look, with their stuff. Like Jonathan Green has this vibrant colors,
hmm,
and Ernie Barnes, he has the own elongated uh,
yeah,
characters.
yeah.
So, what would you say is do you have like a certain thing that you do? The
You know,
Don Tate treatment.
oftentimes my readers tell me that they recognize my artwork when they see it. Because I mean, I'm creating the artwork, so it's going to have that Dante look. However, I've always strived to create a slightly different look with each book. I know that in art school that a lot of illustrators, a lot of artists are encouraged to develop a particular style and that be your signature style. And I get that. However, for me personally, that does not work. I would be one bored artist if I got up every day and I could only paint in oils, or if I was only going to create in scratchboard, or if I was only going to create in watercolors. So I like to try all of the above. Today, mostly I work, you can't see it here, but this is a 32-inch Cintiq, which is like a great big iPad that I draw and paint on digitally.
Okay.
So with this Cintiq, I can paint, I can draw, I can use chalk, I can take a picture of the clouds and paint a picture with the clouds. Um, so yeah, I like versatility. I like being able to do and try different things.
Okay. Well, you have quite a few things behind you. You want to show us some of those first, and then we'll try the share screen thing. See if
Well,
that
I
works.
have a few of my books. This is one of so remember, I'm an author and an illustrator. So this is a
Right.
book that I wrote, and it's illustrated wonderfully by Sharice Harris. And it's the story of Jerry Lawson, who is the inventor of the interchangeable video game cartridge. So back in the 70s, everyone headed off to the local arcade to play Pong. There was a problem
Yes.
with the video games of the 70s, though, in that you could only play one game per console. So Jerry Lawson came up with an idea. He said, let's put lots of games on a cartridge. You stick the cartridge in the console, and now you can play hundreds, if not thousands, of video games. So he made it possible for us to have so many more video game choices today. This was an African American, self-taught African American engineer that a lot of kids aren't familiar with. So really excited about this book.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about one more. So this is Carter Reads the Newspaper. And this is the story of Carter G. Woodson, known as the father of Black History Month. At
Right.
one time, Black History Month was Negro History Week.
Yes.
After Carter's
Wonderful.
was in college and one of his professors said Black people don't have history, he set out to prove through his work that yes, indeed, Black people do have history. And he started Black History, or excuse me, Negro History Week, which eventually migrated into Black History Month. And so this is, yeah, the story behind that.
Okay. Now that one you illustrated or wrote or both?
This is a book written by Deborah Hopkinson, an
Okay.
award-winning author, and I created the illustrations right here on my Cintiq.
Okay. Okay.
And then let me see, one more, one that I'm really excited about because you remember the TV show Good Times.
Yes.
And at the end of Good Times, they would always show that painting, The Sugar Shack, and it
Yeah.
was created by Ernie Barnes. Well,
Right.
I always thought that it was JJ on the TV show Good Times who created the Sugar Shack. For many years later, I discovered it was actually a football playing artist, Ernie Barnes. And Ernie and I had a lot in common because when Ernie was a kid, he wanted to become an artist. But all of his friends made fun of boys who wanted to become an artist. So Ernie became a football player and he played 5 seasons as a professional football player before he retired and created that iconic Sugar Shack image. I related to that story because when I was a
Mm.
kid, I wanted to be an artist, and my friends and my dad too thought artists for girls. So I was not an athlete as a kid, but today I can swim 6,000 yards in a swimming pool. I work out at the gym. I practice yoga. I run. So today I am an athlete. Like Ernie Barnes, I simply had to find the kind of sports that I enjoyed. So this is a story I think that all kids can relate to. And I actually seen the Sugar
Love,
Shack in
love
person just a couple of days ago. It's on display at the Blanton Museum in downtown Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just
I
we
didn't
have
realize it was in Austin.
the
Yes,
Blanton Museum.
it was the Sugar Shack was purchased by a collector, I believe in Houston, just a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago for $15 million.
Wow.
So yeah, so I don't have the Sugar Shack in my
Wow.
studio.
Is Ernie Barnes still living?
Ernie Barnes, unfortunately, is not living now.
Okay. I wasn't for sure about that. So, I was looking at hello, I'm happy to join you. There's some people saying commenting about your work online. Now with that one, did you write that book or did you illustrate it or both?
So I wrote and illustrated that book.
Okay.
Typically, what I will do is I'll write a first draft, and then that turns into draft number 2 and 3 and draft number 80. And then I'll start to illustrate it. With the illustrations, you're trying to extend the story and include things in the story that aren't in the words. So then I will discover, hey, I don't have to say that because I've illustrated it. So then I go and I edit out the words. And then I discover, well, hey, I can actually illustrate this portion of it. So then I kind of go back and forth between drawing and between writing. Sometimes, even draft number 90 and 94 and 95. So there's a lot of revision that goes into creating a simple 1,000 word picture book.
Wow. And
Oh,
that's
I
about
can
the
imagine.
length of a children's book because
Sorry.
I have children's books too, and 1,000 words is about the length of a children's book.
A
Or-
thousand words is actually long for a picture book. Picture book biographies and nonfiction are typically a bit longer, but your
Okay.
average picture book is in the neighborhood of, I would say, 3 to 500 words.
Oh, really?
That's
Well,
what I was
I guess my
thinking.
books are a little bit longer because I tell
Yours
and
are
they're
advanced.
for the kids too. My books are for kids, well, 6 to 10 in there. So my books teach children how to be entrepreneurs. So I have to have a few more words in them. But that makes it simple for an editor when you have only a few words. So we ready to see if we can do some screen sharing and look at
So
some
the only piece that I'm prepared to share today would be some of the illustrations from the book The Day Madear Voted. And so I will kind of share I'll attempt, if this works, to
okay.
share the illustrations. I'll share so you saw the cover. This is the cover. The Day
Yeah.
Madear Voted by um, Wade Hudson, written by me. I'll try to share the screen.
Okay.
See if this actually works. Sharing screen, I need to share Keynote. And I think that I opened up on the wrong slide here. Let me go here. And so The Day Madear Voted is the story of two young boys who get to learn about the voting process through their mother, who votes for the very first time in 1969. So on this particular illustration, Madear, you know, she's standing in her living room. She has on her best dress, and she's announced to the boys that today she's going to vote. And then here she's about ready to explain the history of African Americans and voting. The fact that that oftentimes African Americans, we had to really fight for the right to vote. That oftentimes we had to pay poll taxes or even guess how many jelly beans were in a jar before we were allowed to vote, if we were allowed to vote at all. But on this day, Madear is excited because she's going to vote for the first time, and the boys follow her along. They go to City Hall. There's a lot of excitement in the air. And this reminded me of the time when I was a kid and I would go to the polls with my mom. And I was so proud of my mom because she would cast her vote and she used her voice. Some of the people who are standing around, they're looking at her. They're not real happy that an African American person is in line to vote. But Madear is going to vote anyway. She goes into that voting booth. She comes out. She's practically floating with happiness. And the boys, they're cheering her on. This opens up conversations about the fact that, you know, possibly in the future, that there might be an African American president. And the family kind of ponders that. We move ahead in time. Madear goes to vote every year. And then in 2008, Madear has aged, the boys have aged, and they're going to vote with their mother. And they get to vote for Barack Obama, who becomes the 44th president and the first African American president of the United States. And this was a very touching scene for me, and I think for a lot of African Americans, because I can remember that night when Barack Obama was elected president and the joy that I felt and the emotion that I experienced on that night. And I tried to pour all of that into this final scene. And I think that is the last, the
illustration.
last. And so I'll figure out how to stop sharing screen here.
Well, everything is so beautiful and detailed. And kudos to you for your beautiful work.
The story as well as.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I put all my heart into creating the illustrations. So fingers crossed that that young readers will enjoy the story and that they will not only enjoy the story, but they will understand the history, because our history matters.
Mm-hmm. You captured the essence of. I like the way you wove some other things into the story, like the poll tax and the counting the jelly beans, and they had the literacy clause. That was another thing that they used to use to stop Black people from voting. And what it was like a impossible test that no one could pass. Not even the white people knew. A lot of them couldn't read. The ones keeping Black people from voting, a lot of them couldn't read themselves, but they just wanted to put obstacles there because the federal government said that we had the right to vote, but the local and state people didn't want us to vote, and so they put the impossible barriers in there to keep us from voting until the Voting Rights Act. That was pretty much when it changed. Although it still was slow.
A lot of that is still happening today. You know, a lot of that is still happening today, unfortunately. History.
Yeah, well, not poll taxes. That I don't know about any poll taxes, but
not poll taxes necessarily.
Yeah. But I encourage people to go and vote. Go and exercise your right to vote. It's important. And if you encounter any challenges, report them. You know, don't just accept anything. I've never encountered any in my voting years, but I hear that people do. And if you do, you should report them and keep reporting it and keep going up the ladder until you are heard, because every vote should count. So now, do you accept are all of your works basically through publishers now, or do you accept any private individual or author clients?
So I do work through a literary agent within trade publishing. So I I typically just work through my agent. Now I did over the spring I wrote a book for the educational market. I can't really talk about it. They told me I couldn't talk about it, but I wanted to kind of stretch myself and give a try at writing a it's a picture book, and I can say that the subject is weather, but it is not a trade picture book. So this will be a book that will be used in as part of the classroom and teaching about weather in the four seasons.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's great. Well, we're at the end of our time, and Don, let people know how they can maybe well, do you ever illustrate things and show them to people, or like put them on Instagram, or is all of your work now basically with books and things like that?
So I do have an Instagram page, and it's real easy to find Devas T, DEVAS underscore T, which maybe isn't that easy to find, but and the same as Twitter. I'm on Twitter as well, and I've even been experimenting a little bit with TikTok. So I will often create an illustration, like in Procreate, and then post the process on TikTok, so that the young readers can see how I create my illustrations. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay,
And then my
great.
website, which is dontate.com.
Okay, your name.com. That's easy. So Rhonda, were you able to get the Instagram information? Because
I put,
Rhonda's the one that puts everything on the in the chat.
So it's a DEVAS underscore T. Type that in and
right.
you'll see Don Tate pop up.
Were you able to find it, Rhonda?
Okay.
Okay. You're freezing up a little bit.
Now I'm having yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say. I'm having some connection issues, but I did put your website in the chat.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
All right. Well, Don, thank you so much. It took us a minute to get you on because you were so busy, and we were finally able to get a date that worked. So
I'm
thank you so
traveling.
much. Thank you for being a guest on the show, and
Thank you for
continue
having
success
me.
with your illustrations. We'll be on the lookout. They're beautiful. Your work is beautiful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, and having me on your show.
Okay. Have a great evening.
Bye bye.